Aimee Spector, it's official. We are on the Passion Project. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
I wish I had the blooper reel going because for the last few minutes, Amy's like, oh my God, what am I doing? I have mental illness.
This feels lame.
This feels lame. What are we doing here? Well, the fun part is that we go back far enough that that's where some of the shtick comes from. Yeah. And we'll share the whole story, and that's the goal for today. We're going to connect the dots and tell the Aimee Spector story from start to finish. And I know, that's a lot.
We don't have enough time.
We're not bringing any medical professionals in here. Mental health is not in the building. But it is really fun because we met, I was thinking about it because you have a son named Slade.
Yeah.
I think I met Slade when he was about 1.
Yeah.
And he's 22,
yeah.
Same age as my oldest, Gianni. Yeah. So the fact that we both have 22-year-olds is crazy. But the fact that makes that I've known you for 21-ish years. So we go way, way back. And we met through paddling, and we'll talk about paddling. And I'm going to preface it, as I always do, this is not a paddling podcast.
Are you sure?
Depends on who's listening. There is a lot of paddling, especially with somebody like you. There's a lot of running because of your running accolades, and I look forward to talking about that. But there's also nonprofit, there's education, there's a lot of really cool things that you do. And my goal always is to hopefully have you tell your story where people that you know really well go, oh, I didn't know that about Aimee.
I'm kind of an open book-ish, so I don't know if I'm going to tell any stories that most people don't know, but maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like I mentioned earlier to you.
Although I know very few people. So.
That is definitely not true. We will talk about your community as well. But I mean, we go back 20 some odd years, but I really don't know anything before that. And so for me, that's super interesting is like what got you into the things that you do? And I'll just shine a light. Like, you're a super accomplished outrigger paddler, channel crossings, international racing, etc. Yeah. And you steer for one of the premier clubs in California, Lanaquila. You've gotten into prone paddling over those years as well. Dabbled in multi-channel racing, dabbled, air quotes here. You've done lots of marathons, ultramarathons, trail marathons. You've done a lot we're talking about. Like, I love the nonchalant. If you can't see it, she's like, yeah, the 1% or the 0.001%. And you've done a lot of other fun stuff, and you have a great way of sharing your experiences on Instagram, like really fun, cool. So if you know Aimee Spector, some of these will resonate, and if you don't, you're going to love the stories, I promise. Super fun to have you here. But there's also a big cross-section of our lives with a nonprofit fundraiser called the Ocean of Hope that we both ran, which is really cool. So I'm super happy to have you here. And I shared with somebody the other day, goes, oh, Mark, who's the next one in the studio? I'm like, oh, I've got Aimee Spector in. And they go, oh, Wonder Woman? And I'm like, I don't know if it's Wonder Woman or Mighty Mouse.
Whatever.
Mighty.
Wonder Mouse.
Wonder Mouse. The only reason I say that, and just kind of shine a little light on who you are, if you don't. Aimee, you don't have to give away your age at all. What's the first digit in your age?
I'm okay saying I'm 51.
Are you really?
I'm afraid of that.
I did not know you were 51. And if you're watching, you'll see that over the years, Aimee, like, you've chosen to let your beautiful hair go silver like mine, but I just hide mine under a hat.
That's right. I didn't wear a hat today. I have, yeah. I'm not, people who do know me or people who don't, I'm not super keen, clearly on the dress up and the tons of makeup and I'm come as you are because I don't have time.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about the lack of time because when you do all the things that you do, that's one of the biggest questions is how do you balance or harmonize all the things you do and keep them all going at the levels that you do?
Clearly self-care is not one.
It depends on how you define self-care.
This is true.
If paddling, channels and running 100-milers is self-care, I'm sure you get lots out of it. It just may not result in time to go get your hair done.
That's right. That's
something
it.
like that.
That's it. I can't believe that's the first thing you talked about. My hair is gray. You know what? Whatever people want to do. If you like getting dressed up and doing your hair and makeup, it's totally fine. I'm not judging.
I give you praise. I am not.
I don't have time for it. Nor do I really want to spend the money. Let's be honest.
Okay. See?
I'd rather spend my money on other things. So.
Gotcha. That's totally fair. And I apologize doing that to you. But
it's okay.
Understanding when we get into it, understanding all the things that you have done and continue to do.
Yeah.
I think it's really impressive to put an age to it. I mean, because I think, listen, you at 51, you are outperforming people half your age in all of those sports, or you're training them, mentoring them, coaching them, paddling with them. That's the reason why. It wasn't for any other reason other than, you know, and you're going to talk about, I'm sure, things that you still have on your bucket list that as we continue to get older, you're not slowing down. That's a big part of this. And I appreciate it, because I'd like to think I'm in a similar boat without the accolades or without some of the big accomplishments.
Yeah, what's your first digit to your age?
I just turned 55.
Oh, okay.
I got you smoked, sister. I got you beat.
That's fair. Yeah, double nickels, right?
I know, right? I'm trying to deny it. I'm trying to get younger every year. It's not working out very well. But just to kind of set the tone again, we'll start in just a moment, but you're a mom. We mentioned Slade, or I used to call him Slade Master. Educator, we'll talk about your career. Nonprofit leader with Ocean of Hope, which was incredible, and I can't wait to talk about. Badass athlete. And you seem also to be a big side hustler. Every time there's new things that you're doing. So when you talk about the lack of time,
it's my fault. It's my own
self-inflicted,
fault.
Right? But that's what we do.
I did this to myself.
I tell the joke that I walked up to Randy, my wife, a couple years ago, and I'm like, hey, like I was totally distracted working from home this one day. And I'm like, do you think I have ADD? And she laughed at me. Like I thought she was going, no, you just have a lot. She laughed at me and she goes, yeah, I put an H in there too.
I don't know.
Does that sound familiar?
I don't think I'm that. I'm not sure. I think I'm.
We'll let the audience decide after this conversation.
Yeah, I know.
Got it. Okay. So as I mentioned, I really want to go back to kind of the if I met you 21 years ago. Yeah, like.
Before 21 years?
Yeah, like where did you grow up?
So my dad was a home builder, so he built well, before my dad was a home builder, he was a cabinet maker. And my parents actually met in high school and then went their separate ways.
But where did they meet?
In the Valley.
That's where they grew up. They were in the Valley.
And so my dad's actually, who I call dad, is my stepdad. So they met in high school, parted ways. My biological mom and dad had me and my brother. And then my parents met again after, my biological father and my mom divorced. And so she was a single mom for a while, and she reacquainted herself with who I consider my dad. And so he had a cabinet shop in somewhere in the Valley. And she started doing his, just books, accounting. Yeah. And every day we would go over to his apartment and he would say, what piece of furniture, which he probably had made, what do you like? And so my brother and I would point, and then he would bring it to our house. And that's kind of how he moved in with us. And then neat. Like every day at work, he would say, let's get married. And my mom would be like, no. And then one day she was like, okay. So they went during their lunch hour.
No way.
And I was like maybe 7. My mom brought my brother and I, he's 3 years older, so brought us into her room and was showed us the little marriage certificate. He had been living with us for probably a year. Wow. I think I was about 7, and she was like, I just got married.
I got married.
And I was like, to who? My brother's like, what is wrong with you? And so he transitioned into building homes, and so he bought a piece of property and built a home that we lived in Malibu. And then, I went to high school in Santa Monica because there was no high school out in Malibu at the time.
So you grew up in Malibu?
After 8th grade.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
how was that? How was growing up in that area? I wouldn't know.
I think it was quiet. There's not really anything to do per se.
Were you near the water? Were you guys?
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, we're up above Zuma Beach, and it's kind of rural-ish.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then busing, take the bus into high school until you can drive.
What high school?
Santa Monica.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that. And so were you playing sports? I'm going to move quickly through that.
Not particularly. I did gymnastics when I was younger. I did the soccer thing when I was younger. And when I got to high school, I don't know if it was really something I was particularly interested in. We spent every summer once my parents got, they were together and married, every summer at Malibu, Surf Rider.
Oh.
Every summer, my dad had to load up the car. We would go at 6 a.m. so you wouldn't have to pay the $2 to park and
nothing
stay
wrong
there
with
all
that.
day. I mean, it's
Right.
why I'm smart with my money today. And so.
And so were you surfing? Were you in the water a lot when you were there?
I mean, my mom would tell the story of like, they put me out on a surfboard and I was just like, "Roar," and then I floated away and my mom's like waving at me to come in, and whoever had taken me out there. I think my brother and my dad went out, but I just like floated away.
Got it.
And so they were like, come back.
So
and
surf awareness wasn't high on your list as a kid?
No.
Got it.
Didn't really care too much about it till I got into high school and I was okay. I
Surfing.
longboarded, yeah, and I ended up going to UC Santa Cruz. And
Oh, you're a banana slug.
banana
Got
slug,
it.
yeah, all the way.
What was your focus in school, in college?
I had political science as my major, and then I was like this close to doing economics as a minor because I was really interested in a lot of that think. And then I was like, oh, that's a lot of math. Never mind. Yeah. So just did the political science major, and I graduated a little bit early. So I went to Fiji and New Zealand for 4 months and backpacked around and, came back in July the year. And I missed graduation, wasn't really interested in I'm in Santa Cruz, you're counterculture. So wasn't super keen on walking and it didn't really matter to me, even though I think my parents were a little bit disappointed.
So 2 questions. Did the counterculture nature, kind of hippie nature of Santa Cruz, did that fit you? Was that your kind of world?
I mean, not really. I liked you go up there and it's just an amazing place. It still is. I think it's grown up a lot, but it's beautiful. I mean, you go up to
the
Santa
campus
Cruz,
is like
gorgeous.
wedged in between the redwoods. It's really a beautiful campus.
City on a hill, they called it, because it's Santa Cruz itself, the town, and then you have the east side and the west side, and then you have the campus. And I met a lot of good people up there, for sure. A couple of people I'm still in contact with. And then, of course, I met my son's dad up there. Mm-hmm. He had went to school in Santa Barbara. He was at the community college for a while and then moved up there. But he had graduated and was living up there. And everybody you meet is in the water. It's a surf town,
Big town.
right? So that's where I met a lot of my, close friends and people that I knew, and besides the college. But I didn't stay because once I came back from my trip, I came back to Santa Cruz for just a summer one class, and then I moved back home and worked and traveled, essentially, drove cross country for 4 months, and because I was applying for the Peace Corps and was like convinced, so I guess I was
the Peace
hippie,
Corps. See, this is why we're here. Who knew that Amy was trying to go to the Peace Corps? But let me go before.
I know it's going to meander.
I love that. I want to scratch on that in a second. But tell me real quickly, how was your experience traveling Fiji, New Zealand?
It was great. Yeah, my parents took me to the airport at the time, because this was in '95. You could still go to the gate and wave to the people, So my dad was like, "Yeah, have fun, see ya," and my mom's like at the glass crying, and. Yeah, set out, and I was by myself and had a backpack and stayed a couple weeks in Fiji, and no cell phones. Yep. So you land and you've got your calling card and you're like, I don't even know how to use this thing. And it took me like 2 days to finally settle someplace. It's like a little surf camp, and just had to leave a message. I'm not sure where I am, but I'm okay. I'll call you later.
Was that your first international experience travel?
By myself, yes. When I graduated high school, my very, very good friend, Aimee Spector, who I'm still really close to, who lives in Oregon right now, her and I were like, we're not going to do the whole get drunk in Mexico when we graduate high school. We're going to go off on our own. And so she surfed too. So we packed up a surfboard bag I had a longboard, she had a shortboard, and we went to Costa Rica.
Perfect.
In 1991. She wasn't even 18 at the time, because we went right in June, and she turns 18 in July. So we couldn't rent a car. She got in trouble with her mom right before we left, because she shaved her brother's head just randomly. So she took her passport, and we're like, what are we going to do? But yeah, so we were 2 weeks in Costa Rica. I mean, sometimes we talk about how did our parents let us do that?
Right, I know. Well, the reason I was asking about Fiji, New Zealand is I did that same trip and I added on Australia and Indo right after college as well. And I did 6 months. I totally get it. It's, your son Slade and my son Gianni have just both done overseas study abroad, which has been amazing. I'm such a huge proponent for that because you learn so much in it. But going right out of college is so formative, at least was for me. That's why I was curious. And you're going to some pretty amazing places that are lovely, and the people are super cool and kind and super inviting, and the ocean is amazing there.
Well, the thing too is that when I was living up in Santa Cruz after I was off campus the first year, I had moved in with a couple that I didn't know, but she was 3 months pregnant, but I was renting a house out of their room, or a room out of their house. And she was from New Zealand. So got to know them really well. Obviously, I lived with them. And so she had family there. And so I stayed with her sister for a bit of time, her dad a bit of time. I met her brother. So that was really fun.
Super helpful, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then I think it was, nice for my parents too, even though at the time then I'm 21, it's still a thing when your kid leaves and they're just out in the world and a young woman, but it was a really good experience, and it was like you say, very formative. But like the story that always was told about me when I was younger is I was very, very shy, and I remember feeling very shy, not comfortable talking to people. My mom would bring me to the beach when I was like little and lay out the towel and put me on it, and I would just sit there. Like my brother would already be like rolled in the sand like a sugar donut, and he's out in the water and chasing around, and I was like, just sit. I think I was kind of a fearful child, uncomfortable with new experiences.
I think you've overcome that.
But I think that's why, is it I was very aware that I was fearful and that I'm uncomfortable with circumstances, and I didn't want to be that way. So I've put myself in many, many situations that are extremely uncomfortable, either sort of physically or emotionally, because I don't want to be that way. And I know I have to force myself. I'm not this like adventurous, like, it's like, no, I'm really pretty uncomfortable.
Okay, you can say that, but I think it's super interesting because you really just kind of articulated that pivot from being this shy kid into this quiet, and nervous into this like hard charging, like go all over the world and do crazy stuff. Maybe not crazy, but super hardcore stuff, which we'll talk about. And you also mentioned earlier, we were talking, you're like, you had mentioned that you're very much of an introvert, and I'm like, you've got to be one of the more extroverted introverts that I know.
I mean, I told you after this talk, I'm gonna have to like go in my room and take a nap for like 4 hours. Not that I sleep a lot. I wish I did, but
which we'll talk about as well. Okay, so you said you get back and you start doing some travel across the country, and
drove across country for 4 months, and the truck I had, because I was waiting for the Peace Corps, you kind of have to go through a process. So I had applied, and then they go through the vetting process and the medical. I mean, it's like months. And so in the meantime, I traveled. And when I came back, a friend of mine from high school, who I hadn't really seen until, we had both gone away to college, he was going to see a friend. We lived on Bush Drive in Malibu, and he stopped by, and he was telling me about this program called Teach for America, which is kind of, it's part of AmeriCorps. It's very Peace Corps-like, but you stay in the U.S. and you go into urban or rural schools that are essentially failing, and they're trying to reinvigorate the education system. It was started by someone at Yale. This was like her graduation project of coming up with it. And so I was like, that's interesting. So while I was waiting for the Peace Corps, I applied for Teach for America, and then you go through the whole interview process too, and I got into both. So I was supposed to go to Guyana. Wow. And then Teach for America, you go through like 2 or 3 rounds of interviewing once you do the initial, it's like a group interview. You have to teach a lesson. And so they were like, you're going to be going to Houston, Texas for the summer, teaching middle school. And I just decided to do that, which was an interesting right-hand turn from the Peace Corps, I think my parents were relieved. They never said anything like, are you crazy? Either way, but they were just like, okay, whatever you want to do, you better do it. My dad was always like, if you're going to do something, do it right, do it all the way. And and my mom was like, kind of the same, but also like be smart about it, Actually, they're both that way, but anyway, so I ended up doing Teach for America.
Wow.
Yeah.
In Houston,
Texas for the summer, which is hot.
Hot. Very hot.
It was so hot. And I liked running. I was always kind of it was a thing I liked to do. So it was so hot that you'd have to run at like 4 o'clock in the morning, which I don't mind, or like 8 o'clock at night, which sometimes I would do both because it's just like then there's nothing else to do because you taught for half a day and then you were taking classes in the evenings. And it's an institute. So there's like thousands of people who apply, and then there's 500 that are at what they call the institute. And so you go and you learn how to be a teacher because we're all mostly college graduates with no teaching experience. That was what they wanted for the most part.
So they could kind of mold you into their...
Yes.
Got it. And so how long... That's really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah.
How long did you do that Teach for America for?
So then I went to New York. They place you all over the country. I was hoping to go to LA, but they put me in New York. And I remember when I got my little assignment, my mom was like, oh, that's a shame. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go. And she was like, oh, you are? Oh, okay. She was definitely disappointed, I think, just because I was going so...
Across the country.
Yeah, fish out of water, for sure. And so, so I did that for a year and then came back and started teaching in California. And,
Got it.
Been teaching ever since, or in some form of education ever since.
Well, let's stay on career because it's super interesting. So what was the allure of the Peace Corps? Even though you didn't go down that path, you were pursuing it. So what was the
I think
impetus?
It was that fear factor of like, that sounds really uncomfortable and hard. And in high school and college, which is, I think, a little bit of the Santa Cruz allure, was just the feeling of service, how important that is, and community. Like, I was teasing my dad. We had like Father's Day lunch, and I was like, remember before they had recycling? I mean, in 1988, whatever, we didn't have like recycling programs like we have now, right? It was just starting out. And my dad was like, we are absolutely not like collecting cans around this house. So I would put it in the back of my VW. Actually, the front. No, where's the... Yeah, it's in the front.
What kind of VW was it?
It was a little green VW Bug.
How?
1965.
That's a good...
So
I wish you still had that. Right?
Me too. I would fill it up with all the recycling from our house, and I'd have to drive it down to what's now like where the courthouse is in Malibu, because they had like a recycling center. And I did a lot of like community service in high school, and it wasn't just like for college apps. I really believed in it. You know, Heal the Bay and Surfrider Foundation, and I remember going to make sandwiches for the homeless and at this community center in Santa Monica. That was like a big thing there. I think it still is that level of like service to the homeless population. And so I thought the Peace Corps melded that, and it also meant that I was going to learn a lot of skills that I could then bring back to like the next point of my adulthood and a career. But then when Teach for America happened, I thought, well, it seems a little bit more structured. I mean, I was pretty nervous about Guyana. I had like the very basic 4 years of Spanish. They speak Spanish there. But I'm like, ooh, I don't know. And it just seemed very like, oh, you'll be working in a community and it will depend on what they need. And it was a little unstructured. I'm a structured gal. So Teach for America just fed that a little bit more, that feeling of like, you know, you're going into a school. Yes, it's, going to be challenging, but it's a school and it makes sense. And so.
Thank you for sharing that. Super interesting. Were you, when you were in college or post-college, was teaching where you have a political science focus. Was teaching where you thought you wanted to end up?
When I was in college, I interned for like a legal aid society, which I loved. I thought that was just because again, it kind of put that service part of what I wanted to do into my life. But I always tell people, like, I really want to go to law school. And then I traveled, and it dawned on me I wasn't sure that I was that type of person. And then I say, oh, I should have gone to law school, but I would have been one of those types of lawyers that, like, never made any, like, did everything pro bono. The broke lawyer who's, like, living out of the car. So, yeah, I don't know. I always liked being around kids. They were always fun to me. A lot of my side jobs when I was in high school and college, worked at preschools, and I traveled to, actually the first time I was in Germany, I was a nanny there for a couple weeks because it was a family that I had been babysitting for in Topanga, and he was a conductor, and so he was going to do a job over there, and so I went with the family, and I just always liked being around kids. It was easy. I never had kids that I was like, ugh, like kids were always fun to me. They were interesting or energetic, and I liked the giving them some structure because I think kids like that, and also just being curious and playful with them. And so I didn't imagine myself a teacher, but then, once you do Teach for America, you're like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And,
rad. Well, we need, I love that. And again, that's why we're here. All of this is new news to me, and it's so interesting. And what's really cool is when you hear, or when we talk about some of the other stuff in your life, like the words you're using are super consistent with what I know of you. You're talking about service and community and, running at 4 a.m. Oh, I like to do that. And
I don't like to,
but you've done it obviously for a very long time. And kids and coaching, like that's still you. It's really consistent. Again, for me, hearing what you're saying, like it certainly seems like it may have changed the focus, but you're still doing the things that you were doing or that you were drawn to back then.
Yeah, maybe
super neat, for sure.
Yeah.
And so today, where do you teach, or what do you do today?
So I'm at Redondo Union High School, and I'm a program director it's called School to Career, and so we help special needs students of all varieties, because special needs come in all varieties, to get work training and work placement. We do like temporary work placements, vocational training, and then some students that just really want to get their own job, but they're not quite sure how, or they're having, they're struggling with it. We help guide them towards that or make connections in the community so that maybe a business would be willing to give them a shot. Because we're grant funded, we pay their wages, and they're essentially like our employees, and we put them out there temporarily.
So you partner with organizations, companies, et cetera.
Yeah, a lot of small businesses in Redondo and the South Bay. Yeah.
Those are such great, thank you. Those are such fun. Great programs. We at Crown, we love working with, supporting those folks. It's such a good thing you do. So thanks for that.
Yeah, it's really fun. I did not think that I would end up in high school. When I first started teaching, I was in Houston, it was middle school, which was really interesting because it was a very, very, low income school district, and we were doing like a summer program, and the kids were really, really tough. And I was like, wow, middle school is a whole thing because they're not quite as mature as high school, but they're not as like lovingly devoted to the teacher as in elementary school.
I still have one at home. I know exactly what you speak of. Yes.
Middle school's tough, but it was awesome. And good. I Teach for America, you co-teach when you're in the institute. And so I had these two other co-teachers, and we all came from different backgrounds and different approaches, and it was a blast. And like, of course, we got like the innovative award because we were all like really excited to try new things. I mean, I guess it was all new because we didn't know what we were doing, but we didn't want to do the traditional that everybody else was doing, because it's like education doesn't have to be that way, but we can still like light the fire. And it was so, I still remember the things we did. I still use some of those like energetic ideas, even the things I do now. And so, yeah, that was really fun. But yeah, I ended up in high school after teaching elementary school for a while, and it's fun. I mean, I go to the middle schools also. We have 2 middle schools in Redondo, and I do go there, but not as, my office is on the high school campus. So just that energy. Sometimes at least twice a day, I just get out of my office, get away from my desk, and I just walk the halls, which is a little daunting because you mentioned about the Mighty Mouse. I am small in stature, and some of these kids in high school, they're really big. And you're like walking through halls, like you got to walk like you own the place because they'll run you down, you know. And kids know me, so that's fun. And I always know if it's a paddler kid, junior, because they'll say my first name, but every other student only knows me by my last name. So it's always this like, and then if I walk into a classroom and a student uses my first name, every other student's like, how do you get to know her? How do you know her first name? Or why do you get to call her by her first name? So yeah, high school's fun.
That's
I like
super
it.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll talk more about it. I'm really curious about how many kids you have there that paddle.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a really big, you're tied to a very big paddling community in the South Bay,
Yeah.
which we'll talk about. The last thing on the career part is I mentioned the side hustles, and I think there's been some.
How many?
I don't even know. Do you want to talk at all about some of those, or let's at least talk about the one that I know of right now, which is that the Coffee Can Collective?
Is, yeah.
It's such a neat concept, and I feel like I'm breaking all the rules.
Yeah,
With this
it's
right here,
disappointing, but
I
that's
know,
okay.
right? I totally I screwed up this morning.
You know, coffee just brings people together. I didn't really start drinking coffee until I was in my early 40s, which is hysterical because my parents were big coffee drinkers, especially my dad. Slade's dad, huge coffee drinker. I think on my honeymoon, I was like, oh, what is this coffee thing? But yeah, like you go to paddling events and it's kind of the water cooler. It's where everybody, of course, it's coffee. So yeah, it's been interesting, and I don't get to do it as much.
Talk about what it is. Can you talk a little bit about what it is?
So it's a pop-up coffee shop. Yeah, we just it's wherever events are. That's the goal, is to be where athletes and races are, and offering really good coffee. I connected with someone in the South Bay. It's called Skillet and Whisk, and him and his wife actually just opened up a brick and mortar shop, but he was roasting specialty coffee. I happened to see it on Instagram. I thought that's kind of cool, and I bought some of his roasted coffee for Christmas gifts like about 3 years ago, and then connected back up and said, hey, this is doing coffee at these paddling events. Would you be interested in connecting and providing some? Sure. And so that's kind of how, and I still am using his coffee. I like, it's connection, right, with people and community. And his whole idea is working with like sustainable shops so limit your packaging. And that's what Coffee Can is, 0 waste. We really encourage you to bring your own cups.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Nothing. Because you forgot.
I forgot mine this morning. I'm so sad.
So like no sugar packets, no plastic, no paper. We just really try to be as 0 waste as possible. So that's been really nice too, because connecting with SCORA, which is the sort of governing body for the outrigger races in Southern California. They have like this big 0 waste initiative for races, trying to reduce the impact that we have for the races that are in different places in Southern California. And because there's a lot, there's 1,000 people on the beach on a Saturday with outrigger races. And so to limit the amount of trash that we produce. And so it's been a good fit for that too, is connecting, making sure that we're at as many paddling events as we can be. And during the winter, we go to the one-man races and the V1 races. And so, yeah, it'll just be
That's so cool.
A little bitty side hustle until I kind of like next phase it with part 2 of a career that I want to do. I would really love to have, my own sort of bakery, coffee shop somewhere once I leave education, and still continue to give opportunities to young adults to work and learn what it means to be in the workplace. So still kind of connecting the career, but beyond like the food and coffee end.
It's really, really cool. And what's fun, you're talking about SCORA, which is the Southern California Outrigger Racing Association. And we had Say Craig, Trash Tramp, was in here, and she talked about her 0 waste. And then we had Dawn Meek in here, Atlantic Packaging, and their whole 0 waste, coming at it from both sides. So we have one that's helping people clean it up, and Dawn Meek and his organization is helping change the mindsets of packaging companies to not put as much non-recyclable material in their packaging.
Produce
and then we have you in the middle going, hey, I love this that so many people are focusing on. And I always say that if you're in the water or on the water, you see it firsthand what happens at the beaches and everything. So thank you for doing that. I love it. And just real quickly to close that, Coffee Can Collective. Explain the name because it's really cool, right? Coffee can what? Anything. Coffee can, so play on words, bring people together. Can help the community, can help the environment.
I didn't have to say it, you did.
That's my job, is try to figure this stuff out. But it's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we talked about your main hustle, your side hustle, your future hustle. And we're going to go into, so you touched on running. And running's a big part, and paddling's a big part. Let's start on the running piece, because it sounds like you started running when you were younger, before paddling even came in. Perhaps surfing might have, but I don't know when paddling came in. But let's talk about running, because you've done some really cool stuff. And it sounds like I knew you as a paddler. I knew you as an outrigger paddler when you started, and then other things came in. I didn't know anything about the running. And then we'll talk about where to find you, because your Instagram feed is always amazing, because you talk about all the cool, in a very fun way, all the cool things that you do and who you do it with. Talk about running in your life and what that's provided and for how long, and some of the cool stuff you've done.
I mean, I think the running bit, I liked running in early high school. It's like, if you are an introvert, it's the time where you can spend like with yourself doing all your thinking, but like doing something. I'm not super big on like relaxation, obviously. Like I'm not a spa person, or I just sit around and watch TV. It's hard for me, I think. And it's not because I have ADD. I think I'm just, my expectation for like my level of performance or output is really high. Like you should be doing something, and it should be service and doing things for other people, or coming up with ways to do things for other people. So running was the time to like get to think. And so I liked it, and I liked pushing my body and seeing like, I mean, it's funny because sometimes I have my junior team paddlers like, just go for a run. Like, it's not even that far, but they really like to complain. We don't like running. I'm like, well, nobody likes running. Even people who say they like running's hard. It's hard on your body, even though you can run slow, but even that's kind of hard. And so I don't know. I just like it. I like the solitude. When I was training for the 100-mile, which I know we'll get to, once the training was done, and the training was crazy. Like I look back and think, how did I even get all of that done? But that was the one thing I knew I was going to miss, that solitude, that 3 or 4 hours of just running. I kind of missed that, even though it was kind of miserable.
Well, you kind of just mic dropped, because you're like, oh, running. And then you're like, well, I was training for this 100-miler. Not like, oh, I started doing 10Ks. And
all right, okay.
So but yes, we'll talk about the 100-miler, because that's one of the pinnacles, but you've done other stuff as well. So when did the endurance and distance side of running, did that happen early on? Were you running marathons early, or when did you start? Or did that dovetail with the long distance paddling? I mean, I'm not sure where it all comes together.
Yeah, it was probably a little bit of both. Like I had done the LA Marathon a couple of times and was like, it was far. I don't think I trained for it. I didn't even know what I was thinking, just, okay, let's go. I think post birth of Slade got me on. I mean, I ran even with him. I had him like not in a jogger, but in the belly. And so I liked the running piece, but the distance part probably came post Slade and just pushing my body more and more and wanting to see how far I could actually push it. I mean, once you have a baby, let me just explain.
That's not one that I know personally.
I think that was like, I think for me, I realized like, wow, that's a lot. That was a lot. Being pregnant was really hard for me because I wanted to just keep going. And it's like really hard on your body to do both. Like I remember Slade's dad, like, I'm going to take a skill saw to your paddles if you don't stop. Like you have to get out of the canoe. You need to stop. And but then when you see what you can do at that level, so then when you're not pregnant anymore, you're like, oh, I'm going to go and just see. And so I think that's post-Slade probably got me into that mode more than like pre-Slade. But even pre-Slade, I enjoyed it. I mean, I started paddling way before Slade. I had Slade. And the running was just here and there. 10Ks, sometimes I'd do a marathon, but it was just not something. I dabbled. See, I always say I dabbled.
Yeah, but you can say you dabble, but then when you're talking, 26-mile marathons, 50 milers, and 100 milers, that's not dabbling, sister. It's not even close. So talk about some of the. Why don't you talk about marathons and ultras real quick? Just shine a light on what you've done and maybe a little bit about the why. I mean, I think you've talked a little bit about it, but
it's funny because I haven't done that many marathons. I've probably done 8 or 9. I did Boston twice, which
so you have to qualify for that.
I did. So, and here's what happens when you're in the paddling community, and I know you know this. People are like, you should do blah blah blah, and you're like, nah, okay, maybe, and then all of a sudden. So I have those friends in my life who are like, we went and did like a fun race of the Golden Gate half. And I came in and I was waiting for them. And I did win the Masters Women's Division. So I was like, cool. I was just holding the medal and waiting. They're like, you need to qualify and do Boston. You got to do Boston. You got to do Boston. I'm like, eh. But then, like, you leave the next, week, and you're like, yeah, maybe I could. So signed up for LA, and I wanted to qualify below the time for my age group. So at the time, it had to be 3 hours 50. But I was like, I want to do 3 hours 30. Because the faster qualifying time you have for your age group, the more likely that you'll get in. And I was like, I only want to do this once, so I'm going to go for it. And I did LA in 3 hours, 30 minutes, and 20 seconds. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I qualify, I'm going to just, it's still a lottery. You just have a better, chance of it. And then when I got in, I was like, oh man, this is serious business.
So great. Good for you.
So that's what happens is that either I'll get a kooky idea in my brain and think, okay, well, now it's there. I'm going to do it. Or someone says, hey, you should. And then I embrace it.
I'm right. Listen, you and I, I get
I think a lot of people
get a little niggle, and then it doesn't go away until I go accomplish it or at least try.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you did Boston. Did you PR on Boston?
So Boston, the first time I did it was 3:36, and
so
I was disappointed because I was unrealistic, because it was one of the hardest things I have ever done. It was hard. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be, and I knew it was going to be hard, and it was hard.
What made it harder than running
LA? The hills. Yeah.
Is it a pretty hilly course? I didn't think it was.
It is towards like 17, 18, 19 mile, so you're like, woo. And then, I got halfway and I was like, oh, right. I gotta. And I expended an enormous amount of energy that first half. And then, the wheels didn't fall off because I still did it in 3:36. But I felt as if it did.
Listen, I've run a lot of marathons. I've never run a 3:36, so you've got me smoked.
And then I was like,
but you did it again.
That's awesome. So then what happened was, so the year that they did that Boston was post-COVID. And so they did it in October, which they had never done, right? It's always the third Sunday in April. So then the next year, they decided to hold it again. So I did it in October of 2021, and then they were doing it again in 2022 on the real Boston date. Oh. And because my qualifying time, the finish time for that Boston, qualified me for the next time.
You're like, I got to. If you got right in.
I didn't want to. And everyone was like, I had some friends who were like, she's going to do it again.
Of course.
And some people were like, you're done, right? And I was like, yeah, no. And then, so I signed up again.
How'd you do
6
that
months
one?
later.
Was it better? Since you knew it? No, it was harder.
Because then what happened, that one I did in 3:48, so 2 minutes off of qualifying again. So I guess I could have signed up for a third time. 7 weeks before that, I tore my calf muscle training. I couldn't run for 5 weeks. I was on crutches for about a month. It was
and yet
feeling disastrous.
You still did it.
I did. And I told myself, I'm going to get to the start line and I'm going to get to the finish line. And if I don't get to the finish line, I better be in an ambulance because I'm not quitting. So that was a little distressing.
Okay, but that's the Aimee Spector that I think most people that paddle with you or know you from paddling go, yep, she just nailed it. that mindset is pretty powerful when you start doing, not a marathon wasn't enough. I'm going to quadruple it and go do a 100-miler in Miami when it's like 90 degrees and 90% humidity. You want to talk about that one?
Sure.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
You do, real quick, talk about Miami. Talk about doing a 100-miler.
Well, it was not Miami. It was the Keys. It's called Keys 100. That's okay. So this was prior to Boston. I just was like, I had done a couple of 50s. I did the one on Catalina. And
which is the Catalina marathons, I always say, is my favorite. That's by far my favorite marathon, but it is not easy.
So I did the Catalina marathon.
And then you did the 50.
Well, before I did the marathon, I did the half. And that is straight up 6.5 whatever miles and straight down. And that was pretty cool. And it was post I had surgery. And was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like really keep my training up for it, but I just went for it, and it was like, I don't know, I'll just do it, and it was awesome, but it was hard. Didn't you take
I think
I did win it? Yeah,
you won that one.
Yeah,
monster.
Yeah, I was
remember in Mighty Mouse. That's what I said. Wonder Woman or Mighty Mouse.
And then I did the marathon. Actually, I think before I did the actual marathon, my mom was like, I've been walking so much and I want to do a marathon. I was like, okay. I've been up behind our house on Bush Drive. All the way at the end is a fire road. It's like it dead ends. And then people hike back there. And so she'd been doing all this hiking. So I said, well, let's do the Catalina marathon because it's hilly. That was a long time. I was like, there's nothing like walking a marathon to make you want to run a marathon.
I've done that. I've done the Catalina walking.
I was like, Mom, let's go. Can we run downhill at least? Yeah. It was fun, but it was like, wow, I'm actually really sore just from walking. So then I went back and I did run it, and that was fun, but it was also hard.
Yeah.
And then the 50. And that was, that's a Joe Bark thing.
For sure.
Right? That's the whole...
Big crew,
Joe Bark Society. Another one who says, you should do it. And you're like, I can't say no. And so, but that was really cool. And then I wanted to do it again. But I wanted to do one and see how much faster I could do it. Because that one I think I did in 9 hours. And so the American River 50, which is up in like Auburn, Sacramento area, I did that. And that was awesome. It was 2013. And so I did it in 8 hours. So I was like, okay.
That's so fast, Amy.
It was fun. But it was hard because it was hot.
It's 50 miles, sister.
Yeah, it was 50.
But listen, running the Catalina Marathon is by far one of my favorite things to do. And I can't do it anymore. And I never did the 50, and I regret it because I can't do it. My knee just won't let me. But I'm so glad that...
Well, you could walk it. But
I don't know if I could,
My
to
mom
be honest.
will do it with you.
Perfect. Sign me up. That's super impressive. And it just shines a light on the things like, again, when you get a niggle or you're like, somebody says, hey, let's go. You've done a lot of that running-wise.
That's cool.
Love it.
Yeah.
You just did one recently. I really want to get to the paddling. I don't want to spend all day on running with you because it's a small piece. It's not a small piece, but it's a piece. But you just did something in the South Bay recently. I think I saw it just on your Instagram feed. Real quickly, what did you do?
So it was called the Backyard Ultra. And it's a thing. Like it's a Backyard Ultra is a type of ultra marathoning. And you do a 4.167 mile lap of something wherever it is. So Jason Carver, who is part of Project Barley, actually I met him through Ocean Hope because we were doing an event, and his bandmate also was running a beer brewery, and I wanted music and beer at one of the Ocean Hope fundraisers. And so the beer guy lives behind a paddler that I paddle with. And so that is how that whole connection made. So fast forward to, he got into running and not ultra marathoning, but triathlons. And so he decided to run this event. He fundraised for the South Bay cancer community, which is super cool. So I'm always into that. So I had seen it, and he reached out on Instagram and was like, hey, you should run this. And I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Okay, and signed up. And honestly, it was like, whatever, I'll just, it's a cool fundraiser, so I'm always happy to do that. And then whatever it means. But then I started reading about Backyard Ultra, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a thing.
Yeah, so what's the structure? Because it was an interesting one that I hadn't heard of before.
So essentially, you run the same distance, 4.167 miles, every hour on the hour until the last person is standing. And so, like, the winner of this backyard ultra that they have, like, literally ran like 400 miles, like something crazy. Yeah, like you can read about it, and it's incredible.
But that would be 100 hours, right? Because you're just running 4 point whatever.
It's very ultra marathon.
Starts over.
Yes.
So you're stopping every.
Yeah.
So and then at the top of the hour, you start all over.
Everybody starts again.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So the faster you run, the longer the break you get.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But then
the
possibility.
It's compounding.
As burnout. So I read a lot about it, and I started to think, like, I kind of want to, like, not just do it, but like do it. So then he messaged me and was like, hey, they were going to keep it as small, like just the first year. They were going to keep it limited to a certain amount of people. And so he's like, hey, we got a few spots left. Do you know anybody? I'm like, no, all my friends hate running. Like, nobody wants to do this with me. There's no possible way. But I sent it out to a few people. And so got there on so read a lot about it. And the whole bit is, it's slightly masochistic. And you have to be willing to just go the distance. It's not speed, right? It's just... how long can you endure?
So it's last person standing is kind of how this works?
Yes.
So the winner is the last one to do the last 4 point
all by
whatever
themselves.
Miles. Got it.
Yeah. And
who was the last person standing, Amy?
that was me. So
hey, if anybody has an idea for something they want to do, just know if you call Amy, she's going to beat you.
I mean, I don't know about that, but I will help train you because we'll go together. So I had already been running because I was going to go see my son Slade in Germany in April during my spring break. And I was like, well, I should just find a run. And there was a half marathon where he's going to school. The Sunday I arrived on Saturday. The Sunday that I arrived, there's a half marathon. So I'm like, I'll just train for that. That'd be kind of fun. He's like, Mom, what are you doing? Okay, that sounds fun. He was going to do it with me. And then he's like, that's crazy. I'll just see you at the finish line. So I'm like, okay. So I'd already been running a lot by the time this whole, ultra marathon concept came about with this backyard ultra. So started reading about it, and that bit about just, taking your time, using your rest, but it's not about speed. And so, I rolled up with a friend of mine, Kim Laney, who's like, she likes running, but she hates running, but she likes to be around people who are
That's so funny.
running. So she's like, okay, she brought me there. You have to check in. And I had like a bin and a backpack. Like, I was
organized.
like,
you're ready.
Because when I did the Keys 100, I had bins. I mean, you're running for 24 hours. So you got to change your clothes. You've got your food. You got to have stuff labeled, because even all these events, and with the classic and doing endurance things that seem solo, they're never solo. You have so many people that you want and need there with you.
Rely upon.
Kind of why these things are so memorable. It's really not like me doing it. It's like the people around me who were so supportive of me doing it.
It's a team sport, even though you're the one doing the running, but you definitely have the team supporting you. So in a nutshell, because I really want to keep us getting to some of the paddling stuff. Just because
so
it's an even bigger part. Yeah, what happens?
So we had...
Other than we know the punchline that you won it, but...
Everybody's name was on the dry erase board, and every time you ran your, hour, whatever, then you line back up at the start line again at 3, 2, 1, and the bell rings. If you're there, you go. If you stop in the middle of it, you're out. If you don't make it back in the hour, you're out. If you don't line up at the start, and the bell rings, you're out. So people started crossing their names off the dry erase board, and I was like, oh, that's kind of an ugly look. I'm
not going out
I'm not
that
sure
way.
I want to do that, And then, just kept going. And then now I'm at the 7th lap. So I've surpassed what I thought I was going to do, which is now I'm past a marathon amount. And I thought for sure it's not my gig. I'm going to start, and I don't stop until I stop. But this start and stop thing was kind of different for me, and I embraced it. I was like, okay. And when it's a stop, I ran about 10-minute miles, so I had usually between 15 and 20 minutes to rest. You eat a little something, drink. I really didn't change my clothes all that often. I changed my shirt once and my socks and shoes once.
So how many miles?
So I ran 54 miles.
In how much time?
In 13
so that's 13
hours.
hours.
Yeah.
So that's so rad. Congrats on winning that too.
Fun.
It's such a cool experience.
It was fun.
I've done the David Goggins 4x4x48 a couple times, which is very similar because it's 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And so it becomes that sleep deprivation piece, that time, families, like my wife's like, don't even come near the bedroom, like you smelly dude, stay in the garage or something. But there's interesting challenges that get added into some of these events that make it's not just a distance run, you're adding these other pieces to it, which makes it really cool experience, right?
And that's why I was like, maybe this is my jam moving forward, because I really was surprised how much I embraced the start and stop. The people that I had there, the last lap that I ran, it's dark. It's midnight. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I start hearing this screaming down the beach. I'm like, uh-oh, because it's, a little sketchy.
Right.
No, it's my friends, and they're waiting for me to come. The finish of that had more than a dozen of my, Wanakila,
so cool.
BFFs who were there just excited for me. That's what made it memorable, not the running or the distance. I was surprised that I got 54 miles in a day when I was not prepared. I didn't have that mileage.
Yeah.
But I had the support, and I did not want to quit. And so I think that's what those races are about, of just we got to the last 3 of us for a couple of the rounds, and Jason was like, I'm kind of hurting. I think I'm done, but I can do one more lap. We can all do the last lap together and kind of all be the runner-up type of thing, the assist they call them in the ultramarathons.
No, I'm gonna take this thing down.
Well, he just said I can do one more lap, and we had another guy there, John, who was, you could tell he's an ultramarathoner, big, tall, thin, runner guy, and he's like, yeah, I'll do one more too. And so I was like, well, I'm doing 2. And
It's
we came in, and I was like, okay, I'm looking. Did they put on their bags? Yeah, Jason's like, it's you. And I ran that last lap, and that was probably the most. Yeah, every time I run that now, because it's local, right? It's right where I live, down by Redondo Beach Pier and towards Torrance Beach. I thought for sure I'd had PTSD running it. Every time I run that,
get fired
I
up.
smile. Yeah, I just go, that was one of the better experiences I've had.
Oh,
sure.
I love these stories. These are so cool. And again, I think anybody listening is going never heard of such a thing. And not to mention, you took it down. Pretty impressive. So listen, all of this and that mindset and the way you look at racing, you're like, I'm going one more. That takes us right into your accomplishments in paddling. And so we've talked a bit about paddling, and for you, there's 2 parts. There's more than 2. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about outrigger and Lanakila first. We'll talk about prone, and prone will take us into Ocean of Hope.
Yeah.
So most paddlers in Southern California know you through Lanakila and steering the elite women's boat and doing the channel crossing, the Catalina. How many times have you done the Catalina in a 6-man or 9-man in this case, I guess? Do you know?
Well, you mean with the women's team? Because I have come
back. With the co-ed team, with whatever how many times have you raced that channel in a 6-man, 9-man?
So this will be my 26th season, but I did miss it 1 year. Thanks a lot, Slade Dozier.
You had to have you couldn't have paddled while you're pregnant, whatever.
So he was a 3-month-old, so I didn't do it that year. So 25 years.
That's
going
incredible.
over. And then I have done it a few times the next day, co-ed masters coming back.
Of course you have.
And
do you always steer? Are you always a steersman?
For the most part. I have done a few of those races paddling over for the women's team. The masters co-ed team, I've almost always paddled, steered a couple times, but mostly paddled in seats 1 and 2. My first year paddling, I was with a different club than I am now. And it's you don't know what you don't know. I just laugh because I steered it, and we were in the spec boats. So what people call the heavier boats. They're the traditional boats. So that's just funny in and of itself. No covers, no spray skirts that, keep the water out. No pumps, right? You still had to bail.
A little bit more antiquated approach, right?
It feels like it. No clue what it meant to have race fuel. So, and I
nutrition and such.
Nutrition, right? Yeah. So one of the changes I still laugh about, a teammate came into seat 5, I'm in seat 6. It took us 6.5 hours. She brought me a box of raisins, and she had stuck them in her bathing suit top and jumped in it. It just makes me laugh. I think, first of all, I don't even know if I ate it because I don't even like raisins, but that was so long ago. And then today, what you see, the equipment that we use, and the speed with which we do it. Like there was a year we did it in like almost 3.5. It was a little over 3.5 hours.
That's so fast.
I mean, that's
and that race
fast.
is Avalon, Newport.
The women go Newport to Avalon.
Avalon,
yeah. And so, and it can be any types of conditions. And I feel like in 20, plus years, I've seen every condition in that channel: currents and swell and wind and, fog and just everything that you can get. And I've raced in it all. And then, coming back, the men usually have it like downwind or at least down current or down swell, and sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't for them, more so for them. But the times I've done it with the co-ed, you could get anything too. It's homicide, it's on your right shoulder, and so
Well, and that's the beauty or the challenge of any channel, is you never know what you're going to get. And you've done a lot.
The fun part,
over and above that
Yeah.
Channel, Outrigger, you've done quite a few other ones as well, right?
I've done Molokai Channel lots of times on lots of different, craft, and then the Cuba to Florida paddle.
That's prone. We'll get there in a minute. That's a whole nother. People are like, hold on, what now? Like your list of
I know, it's so funny.
things.
People are like, you must like boats. I'm like, no, I hate boats. Oh, do you like the water? I'm like, not really. I don't like to get in the water.
So what do you like? If you don't like boats and you don't like water, what do you like?
I mean, I like the challenge of it. It's definitely like, I think the ocean's scary. There's a lot going on under there and on there, and anything, you get any day can be a different condition, and that's chaotic to me. And I like finding my abilities in that, of like, can I endure this? What is this going to do to me? And can I get to the other side of it successfully? Yeah.
It's so interesting, your mindset, because this goes back to what you said about sitting on the towel on the beach. And I don't know if I've met anybody that's articulated it that way. You're like, you seem like, or what you say is that you're always trying to overcome some feeling about that, even though you've done this channel 25 plus times. I've done this channel in that same number, but I've never gone into it thinking it that way. Like, I want to get it done. I want to make it as fun as it can be. I want to go as fast as I can. And I love the accomplishment, but I've never gone in like with that mindset of like, ooh, I'm afraid of it. Oh, I don't like, it's just such an super surprising to me, especially as accomplished, and you've been doing it for 25 years, to still have that mindset in there. Like,
I think it's healthy though too. Like, I want to make sure I'm always a little bit afraid, because keeps you on your toes, keeps you thinking, keeps you prepared. You don't walk in like, oh, I've done this before, because sometimes that's when things happen, is you kind of let your guard down, and I mean, my best channel crossings, whatever it's been, has always been with a team. I like that. Like, people always ask me, like, why don't you prone anymore? And it's like, no, it's challenging for sure. And it's fearful, because I'm never quite sure that I can get there. I'm not a super accomplished swimmer, and I don't think I necessarily have like the body type to be a really, really fast prone paddler. But the team thing for me is incredible. The teammates I've had over the years, some that, over 2 decades of racing with them. I mean, they're some of the closest people that, are in my life, and besides my son, and my parents and sibling. And so that to me is one of the best parts of paddling, is the team thing. And then all those little moving parts of people and personalities and abilities and execution, and then add to it the drama of race day, and then other teams, and then the conditions, and there's so much chaos. It's like cool to have to find that like calm and structure and like grit in that chaos. I like that.
I can see your light. You just lit up. Is that one of your paddling superpowers? Is that ability to find the chaos or find the calm in the chaos?
I don't know. I don't know if my teammates would think I'm calm, because I use a lot of expletives back there. I'm known for trucker talk, but just finding control. Like being able to find that spot where it's like, I'm not going to let this beat me. Like, I'm a competitive person, but first and foremost with myself. I expect a lot out of myself. I expect a lot out of my, performance in any level, as a mom, as, a coworker or a staff member, or, a boss, and then just as a teammate. Like, I expect a lot out of myself as a steerer, making sure I'm doing the right thing back there for the if I'm doing what's right, they can paddle really, really well. I pride myself on that. Like, I want to create the environment where my paddlers just know that they can just go, they can trust me. They don't even have to think about what's happening. Like, they forget I'm back there.
I bet they don't. I bet they can't.
I mean, I always used to tell people, like, if you lose a race, you blame the steersman, but if you win a race, it's 1 through 5.
Not true. Everybody knows, like, you can't race a car without a steering wheel. It just doesn't work, It's the same in a boat. I love everything you just said. Like, it totally resonates with me, and I don't think anybody that knows you well would say anything other than what you just said about expectations, high performance, and everything that you do. I totally get it, and I think knowing you as long as I have, like, yep, that's like some of the stuff has surprised me, like some of the motivation, but what you just said right there, high performance, high expectations, want to perform well, want to make sure my team performs well, it goes back to your community and the team. I think it's so spot on, and really from a quarterback's perspective, which is what you are if you're in seat 6, like, you're responsible for getting that team across as fast as possible.
Sure.
So,
I mean, I haven't always done, like, I'm not perfect. So there's definitely been races and moments. And I mean, because I'm so highly self-motivated, like, I don't need someone to tell me it's time to go train, or, what are you doing? What's your schedule look like? I can be an abrasive individual. I've been told that.
So let's hear about that.
I embrace the abrasiveness.
Does it require a boat for you to have, does that part of Aimee Spector come out when you're in charge in seat 6, or does it come out anywhere else?
Oh, no, it's everywhere. Yeah, like at work, when we have a student who's probably very challenging to a lot of other people, I'm like, they send them to me. I'm I wouldn't say the bad guy, but I definitely, like, lay down the gauntlet a little bit more, and I'm the heavy.
The heavy.
How about that? Yeah.
Love that. That's great. It's good that
Which is odd, because
but you
I don't see myself necessarily that way, but kids do not. Difficult kids never fazed me. And I think that's why I ended up staying in education. Like, I'd go to interviews for jobs, like, what's your discipline policy? I'm like, honestly, I don't know, because I don't have problems in my classroom. I don't have discipline problems because it's not a problem. It doesn't faze me. And so I think that vibe came out right away in whatever class. Little second graders, fifth graders, middle schoolers, high schoolers. I mean, I go to, high school classes that I'm not teaching. I'm not the head teacher once a week. So I'm seeing 300 kids within a month. And those are not students who are used to me every day. But I don't have problems because
you have that air about you, perhaps.
I don't know, just vibe. And I'm curious about students. I value them. I initially want them to know that they're valued and heard, and, so I think they appreciate that, that I'm not a kindergarten teacher. No. The sweetness.
Let me ask you this. Where do you think, did you develop that through your tenacity in endurance sports, or did you think you always had that,
yeah, it's
that boss
probably
factor?
I think a little bit of both. Yeah. I mean, I think what happens is that intensity and drive I've been able to, utilize it more effectively. I'm probably a little softer around the edges than I used to be, can execute it a little bit less abrasively, but I think it's always been there, that drive, that passion, that I want to do this and do it really well. And I actually asked students one time, I was doing a lesson about, like, how people perceive you, talking to them about when you walk into an interview, how do you think that people perceive young adults and teenagers and that type of thing, and how do you want them to? And so I asked them, like, you're already making 8 to 20 seconds, someone's making a judgment about, what do you guys think? And one of the students said, oh, you're very passionate. Like, well, how do you know that? He's like, I don't know, I just have a feeling, because you did, he was kind of describing, and I was like, wow, that's an intuitive kid, because that's how I feel about myself too. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't go into anything what we used to call in our household, so we didn't use the word half-ass, but equus hemianus. Like, I don't want to do something just
Hold on, what's that word?
Equus hemianus.
Okay, I learned a new word. I like that.
I don't want to do anything halfway. Like, I don't want half measures. I'm going to go and do it all the way, even if it's a disaster.
This is why I've always liked you, Amy. I didn't know why, but, like, that's the kind of person. that I hope I am. That's the type of people I like to train with. That's the people I like to have working with me, like high achievers, self-motivated, and they know the difference between, they know who to be and when.
Yeah.
Like, I need to be this person to coach this person right now. I need to be a little bit more of a disciplinarian over here. Like, not everybody gets that.
Sure.
Not everybody has that skill set.
But I have learned a lot over the years, and that's why I like the team that I'm with so much. I mean, I have, my coach, Jill Schooler, I've learned so much about how to be a better people person through Jill. And because I think she's phenomenal. She's incredibly patient. And because coaching a bunch of women, we're annoying. We're dramatic, but we're all self-motivated or highly motivated. We're super competitive, especially at that top crew level. That's a lot of personalities.
Yeah, and well, your boat is always, I mean, you're in the top few couple boats most years. So you're talking super high performance year after year after year.
It's a lot. Yeah, and a lot of pressure. And then we all put a pressure on ourselves and articulate it in different ways, right? We're all high performers, but the way we show it or the way we show our weaknesses is different. But
But that's a team sport. And that's why a lot of us choose not to do team sports, like, because it's also known as there's also paddle ticks that come into 6-man, 9-man. But on the flip side, you have done, and you've talked a little bit about it and alluded to, not being in a team environment, paddling the channel. Prone. Talk about your prone. What prone is laying down on a surfboard like craft and paddling with your arms for hours and hours, and it's the slowest of the craft across the channel.
Besides walking.
Yes, if you could walk on water. What got you into it, and then what have you done with it? Because you've done a lot.
Yeah. Well, actually, for instead of a wedding ring, I really wanted a paddleboard. So I remember driving up to Joe Bark's house, and it was a few months after Slade's dad and I got married because I don't know, it just took some time. We went up there and got a board that I actually still have. It's a 14-footer because it took us so long to get it, it actually came after Slade was born, and so I have his little footprints from the hospital at the nose of the board, so I still have that board. But yeah, I don't know, I just thought it was kind of interesting, and Slade's dad was doing it. I mean, actually, that's how Ocean of Hope, because you met Kelly, and he was doing that. When I first met Kelly up in college, I found a mole on his back, he tells everybody, that ended up being cancer, and he had to get surgery, and luckily didn't have to go through treatment, but he was always kind of keenly aware of the cancer thing. And so when he saw, the Ocean of Hope, when you were doing it, the very early years, like 2000, he was on the first crossing for him that was part of Ocean of Hope. At that time, that year, I was over at Dad Center racing with the team that I ended up staying with, which was Lana Keela. And so the prone paddling was always kind of just in the background for me, and doing it and kind of having fun doing it, short races, doing, the peer-to-peer that we have in the South Bay, Memorial Day weekend they used to have, because the Hennessy's kind of got resurrected in the 90s. And so I thought it was kind of interesting and different. And
you already knew that channel pretty well from paddling it in 9-man.
Yes.
So you get on, and how many times have you done the Catalina Classic?
5 times. 5th and final.
I've heard a lot of people say it. I've heard you say that, but we'll see if there's not a 6th.
I promise.
Good for you. Listen, in a nutshell, difference between paddling prone across the channel, 9-man, or OC1, like, do you have a favorite? And you have a least favorite.
Yeah, I like the 6-man the most. Yeah, I just think it's the most dynamic and not as long.
What's the hardest one?
Definitely prone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, much respect to people who've done it. Like, I saw Doug Weems a couple weeks ago. A lot
Doug's
of us know.
done it 17 times,
I mean,
perhaps,
and he's always like, he seems so happy. I'm like, Doug, I wish I could be that happy starting, paddling, and finishing these races. But he just has the fun mindset. And I think a lot of people like that. So much respect for people that have done it once, have done it 25 times, somewhere in the middle. Yeah. Joe Bark, I mean, it's incredible, but it's just, so I was at the finish line of the classic before I was ever really doing the long distance prone paddling. And it piqued my curiosity. Like, I wonder what it feels like to actually be on the board finishing rather than at the finish line. And that was the first year that I was like, I'm going to give it a try. And it was my best year because I didn't know anything any better. And plus, the conditions were kind of nice. The conditions were good. I had an awesome escort boat driver.
Everything.
I mean,
especially in that race.
My races got progressively longer, harder, and worse.
Got it.
The conditions were just, my last year, which was 2021, it was like in 2017, everyone's like, that was the worst year. And then, for conditions and the current, and then 2021 was like, it was brutal.
There's been a lot of bad years over the last 10 for whatever reason.
Yeah. Climate.
Yeah. Something. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So that takes us right into Ocean of Hope. And can you shine a light on what Ocean Hope was and your role in it?
Like for me, because you already know.
Well, no, for everybody listening and watching. I know what it is, but I'd love to hear your... So in a nutshell, what is the Ocean of Hope? Or what was the Ocean of Hope? What did it do and provide?
Yeah, it was fundraising for the Sarcoma Alliance. So it was a group of paddleboarders started by friends, high school friends.
Keith Minamitsu and Susie Leiter started that in probably 1990.
I thought it was 99. Okay, 98, 99.
Right around there, yeah.
Yeah, and I happened upon it again probably in 2004. And it was a small group, and the idea was to, look, we're already out there doing these incredible events, putting ourselves through the ringer. Why not do something for someone? And from what I understood, Suzanne was a nurse, and she couldn't get a lot of information on the cancer that she had been diagnosed with, sarcoma. And so she really threw herself into that, and her friends threw themselves into helping her create this space where people felt supported. There was fundraising aspect to it, so you could get second opinions and really get, treatment for a cancer that is still... A lot of childhood cancers end up being sarcomas. If you survive it, you may have lost a limb from it because of where they start. And so it just spoke back to that level of service that you talk about in community. I was already paddling, outrigger canoes, so I kind of brought it there first. I remember talking to you about it, and I'm like, you should really talk to the outriggers, and you're like, yeah, you should. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So yes, thank you. Listen, you are. It's really, this is a cool story because my friend Keith Minamitsu started it with Susie, as I mentioned. I jumped in when she passed in 2002, and I ran it for the next bunch of years, and then I was looking for an exit around the time that I was having kids, and I had run it for quite a few years, and I actually asked Slade's dad, Kelly, if he wanted to run it, and somehow it got to you, and you said yes, and I was like, oh, I didn't even ask, hallelujah. And you opened up a door. Like I'm very grateful for the years that I had, probably 9 years running it, and I learned so much.
At least more than that, because I did it for about 10.
Yeah, I think we both did, and time really flies.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible organization doing so much good, and it was like really, Mike Rogers was here, and he started a big fundraiser through the Classic. I think it was the first fundraiser through the Classic for Hoag Hospital, and Paddle for the Cure. And we kind of followed that mindset and that operating system and used the Classic to raise money for the Sarcoma Alliance. And we were the Ocean of Hope was at the finish for 20 years of the Classic, providing food. And I mean, it was the primary sponsor. There's other ones now, and there's other organizations that have done incredible stuff using the channel, but it really started with Ocean of Hope. And if you're a prone paddler, for the last 25 years, you probably have something with Ocean of Hope on it, a shirt, a hat, a sticker. It was on a lot of the boards. We had so many people involved. And then, yes, as you mentioned, when you were gracious enough to take it on, you were able to expand it. You took it to Hawaii to the Molokai race. You took it into Outrigger, Lanakila. You took it everywhere. And that was so great, because that's what you want to see is when you're a leader of something, you want to be able to pass it on to somebody that can expand it and grow it and do something different. And you did an incredible job of it.
Thank you.
And it must have raised, I don't know the total over all those years, but we're talking it's got to be into the million. It's got to be $1 million or more for that cancer community, which was incredible. Yeah. So thank you for that. You did such a wonderful, wonderful job of it. And let's talk real quickly about, again, you've already talked a lot about service and community. Talk about what it felt like running.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but what did you get out of that?
I mean, I just, looking back and thinking about it, the number of families that I met that were just so unbelievably grateful for just even the little, I felt like every year we didn't do enough. And they were so supportive of like, even just the little bit that we did. So meeting the families meant so much because it connected all the efforts, all the outreach, all the training time, right? Which feels incredibly selfish because you're out, right? Your child's at home, or you're giving up a lot of what you think is important, like sleep or whatever, but it's still yours, right? So giving all that up to like help other people, or to feel like the families have been seen and heard, or a survivor has been seen and heard, it was unbelievable. I mean, I tell people all the time, it was some of the best years of my life. And I've done some cool things, but to look back at that, and I know my son remembers a lot of it because it was formative for him too. I mean, when I was fundraising with it, it was before I started running it, right? So it was like you said 2004, so like around 2007, I remember bringing a lot of, like, we did some things with the outrigger team, and then slowly, once I think in 2013 is when I took it over, maybe 2012.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Or maybe 2009, because I know I did it for 10 years, and I bowed out in 2019, so,
Okay.
So maybe it was 2009, because you came in 1999, so, yeah. And so it was formative for him too, because Slade was...
He was there.
He was there through so much of it, and he remembers a lot of it. And so it did so much for me. I learned about fundraising, first of all. I learned about nonprofits. I learned how to be a speaker, which I still don't like to stand in front of a group and talk. And I'm a teacher. Like, I can stand in front of a group and talk, but to have to do that, oh my gosh, to learn to public speak, and just all aspects of it. And like I said, like, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not good at like convincing people to do anything necessarily, but if you're passionate about it, I believed in what Ocean Hope was doing, what the Sarcoma Alliance provided, and so I never hesitated to reach out somewhere, even just a random, hey, this is what we're doing, and would you want to support, and sponsorship, and I gotta know, okay, next one. Like, I was just the tenacity that you needed, and I think that I had just grew exponentially because I just wanted it to be, I felt very, very obligated in like a good way to make it the best it could be, and to make sure that I was representing it well, right? Like, if someone is having me do this, I got to do it really well. I don't want to do this, half measures, no equus hemianus. Yes. I'm going to go all the way. And it's been a lot, but the years we were at the Molokai finish for the paddleboard race. And we'd gone out to Florida races, and we were just talking about a mutual friend that was running races here in Southern California in the early 2010s. And so, it was phenomenal. And I still have pictures in my house and things of finishing the Catalina Classic with families there that you were either fundraising in honor of someone that had passed, or the person themselves who was still, going through cancer treatment. And oh my gosh, those were very meaningful.
Big time. Yeah. Thank you. Listen, if I could bottle what you just said about what it takes to run a nonprofit, you just nailed it. Because nonprofit leadership takes, we talk a lot about it here, because I have a lot of people that come in here that's what they do, and it takes that level of passion that you brought to it, the commitment, the community, fundraising. Like, you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't have community behind it, you don't have a leader for it, and you don't have fundraising, it won't exist. So what you did and how you did it and who you brought into it and for how long, and again, this is what's hard about it is it's unpaid. So you did that all on top of parenting, working, training, and all the things you've talked about. So it's a huge commitment, and I just give you huge praise and thank you.
Thanks,
as someone that ran it for a long time, like, being able to turn it over to you, had you not stepped up, I don't know what would have happened. And today,
it's not around.
It doesn't exist anymore because nobody stepped up, and there were some structural changes that happened. Sure. But
and we had, 2019, I just felt like I'd done it for 10 years, and I think that there, potentially could have been another direction someone could have taken it and done some, maybe new ideas, but then COVID. So, and then once that hit, and like you said, structural changes, but absolutely zero regrets, and how many things can you do in your life where you can say zero regrets? But I would never trade for a minute the amount of time, like you said, unpaid, spent doing it. It was incredible and met so many good people out of it. Still to this day, I think, people still remember their time with it, and I think it also can be a framework for when other people are looking at maybe they want to do something like that, or they were part of it just minimally and they're like, I want to, build something. There was things that I think were in place that I think have been imitated, actually. And that's not bad for people to look and go, I'm going to do the exact same thing, and maybe even do it better. It's like, that's okay,
That is okay.
So I'm happy for that it was maybe a model for other organizations or people, leaders, to do the same types of things, but just better because they have more time.
Yeah. Well,
or expertise.
You're so right. And whether it's better or different or related, or even if it's exactly the same, you look at that channel has such a power. And, I always say it a lot in here. If you've grown up in Southern California, you looked at that island, that the gravity, if you're a water person and or a surf or a lifeguard and you look at it all the time, to paddle that is a humongous accomplishment, but it's more than that, because it's something that you look at all the time. You'll never look at that channel the same way again. And so when you can apply that kind of big accomplishment with doing good, what a great symmetry, right? A symbiotic approach. And, you've got the Ben Carlson Foundation that uses it to great end. Absolutely. You have Open Water that does it for our first responders and military. Yeah. You have, and then there's lots and lots, and you hear of other little underground ones. It's so cool.
It is. So in 2017, that was probably my most memorable, because we had a student at the high school who passed from cancer, and it was quick. Like, he got diagnosed, he was really tired. Within 4 weeks, he had passed away. Wow. And I reached out to the family in June, and I was like, I am so sorry. Didn't really know the student, didn't know the family at all. And I said, this is what we do. Ocean of Hope. I would love to have your son's name, and just to honor his legacy. He was an athlete. He played basketball. He was set to go on to, be recruited. And they were like, okay, sure. And 2017 was really bad.
Yes,
no,
I was there.
2021,
I was
right?
there with
Okay. It was really bad. And there were times in there where I was like, what would that look like if I just quit now? Like, minimum of 4 times I went through it in my head. What would it look like? Could I get on the escort boat and then we would drive the car over? Wait, but the parents and family are there. Like, several times, and I just thought, I can't do it. They're standing there waiting for me, and they were waiting a really long time because it was like 8 hours. But it was the most memorable race, as hard as it was. The thoughts that went through my head, and that I had to go past that, because I'm like, I'm not giving in. I'm not going to do it. I have to get to that finish line. And I was really close to his sister post, the whole thing. She was still at the high school, helped her get a job, like just the family. We stayed close for a while. And I don't think I could have done that race without them, if that sounds, correct. And so I respect a lot of ocean, anybody who does something not only for themselves. I mean, it's fine. You can still do, things just for yourself, but to do some of these monumental, racing events or whatever we do, to tie it to something with service and community, it's like, to me, that is motivating. I think we finish because of it, Everybody else maybe would drop out because they just, they get in their heads that it's just about them or ego or whatever. And maybe it's ego for me too, that I couldn't stomach driving up to see the family waiting. I had to get to the beach with them waiting, and to see my son there. Like, what are you doing?
Hey,
you
listen.
look really miserable, but big hug. And over every single classic, my son was at the finish line, from little to, coming from a soccer game when he was 17. It's like, that is also awesome to have your family there. And
from a parenting perspective, thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing all that. It's exactly what we always talk about with the Ocean of Hope and all these things. And we talk about it all the time with Ben Carlson, like getting people to understand when you do something for others, whether it's a fitness thing, whatever, in service of others, it changes the game. It makes it so much more rewarding and powerful, and you're not just doing it for yourself. And that was the mantra I learned from Ron Roebuck. My first year running the Ocean of Hope was giving people that are hyper-focused on this thing fairly selfishly, but doing it for others. It changes everything. You're already training. Do good with it. And it's incredible. And when you have people's names on the board and when you meet their family on the beach, it has such power and such weight. It's so good.
Yeah.
Amy, I could do this with you all day long because we could talk about all these cool things.
But let's not do that.
Let's not do that. But let me ask you, what's next? Do you have any niggles in your mind that you're like, 100-miler, a non-pro? Like, is there anything, or have we already kind of talked? You're just
No, it's
you have
so
a race
funny.
coming up. You know?
I mean, well, yeah, we've got 9-man season is here, and so I've been coaching our junior team for the past 5 years, which has been awesome. And so watching that like new round of young adults and kids who you saw as little like cakey, they're 9 and now they're like
hammers.
Yeah,
Right.
they're hammers. That our junior paddlers are absolutely amazing. Nice families, good kids. Sometimes hard to get them to practice. Why? Because they're at another sport that they're water polo or swim or lacrosse, like the football. Like these kids are they're amazing, and so that's been really fun. But so last year we did Samoa World Distance Championships outrigger. I was happy to be on that team and steering the crew for the 40s. And so this year we're taking a group of juniors to Kona. So I got 23 juniors racing, except for maybe 2 of them. None of them have done a race outside of California and in Hawaii. So Kona's like that for a lot of outrigger paddlers. Like that's their first sort of foray at getting into the Hawaii racing. So that'll be really fun. And I'm racing too. We have a couple Masters women's cruise racing, and Catalina, that's our big thing, and hoping to do well there. And then running, it's so funny. I had said to someone, I wonder what 200 miles is like, and they're like, nope, you better not.
Now you've piqued my interest. You've said it out loud.
I don't think so. I don't think I could. But
that's incredible.
The ultra marathon thing, the backyard ultra, I would consider doing one of those again. It was so bizarre, but it was so interesting and fun. I think that I would do it, and I would want to see how long, because part of that one, I think it was like, hey, the bar's closing. Everyone's like that, but it would be cool to do another one where it's like, got to keep going. Could I keep going if somebody else said, well, I'm doing 2 also? I'd be like, okay, well, I'm doing 3. Like, can I keep upping that ante?
Well, listen, I think that this is like Amy's public service announcement, PSA. Like, if you want to know the secrets to success, you never stop. You keep giving yourself big goals.
No half measures.
What's the word?
Equus hemianus. My son knows it.
I don't. I'm going to learn it after this, though. But what an incredible story of just all that you've done, all that you do, how you do it. I love watching the mindset go from one side to the other with you, and it's really interesting. And I would imagine as a coach and as a teacher, educator, counselor, that you're awesome because you can, again, as we said, you know how to play people. You know how to motivate people. You said, I don't have a discipline problem. I bet you don't.
Because I don't have a discipline problem. Like,
right?
I'm not undisciplined in any respect.
No, you're not.
It's probably my downfall sometimes. I could be a little bit like...
Life would be boring with...
I mean, I need to chill a little bit.
Yeah. Listen, you and I are cut from a very similar cloth in a lot of ways. I talk about that all the time. How does someone chill? How does someone stop? I'm not sure. Amy, thank you so much for being here. I love the story. Again,
you better edit out the bad parts.
There wasn't a single bad part. What are you talking about?
I know. I didn't use one expletive. That's shocking.
I like those. I know. Your boat team's like, whoa, that
I know.
clearly
Who
wasn't
is that?
her. They must have bleeped. Beep,
She's
beep.
on her best behavior.
No, this is awesome. And again, just a great example of how to go hard, how to do cool things, how to make it super fun. We didn't get into it because I know every year you try to do something different on your birthday. So I want to hear what you're coming up with next.
Yeah.
But until then,
I'll text you.
Please do. Until then, Thank you for doing this.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for all you do.
Yeah.
And good luck with all the fundraisers coming up.
Thank you.
I will see you on the water.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Amy.
you.